Gurgle. The immense nine-nether battle will boiled violently, its ferocious energy sweeping across the heavens and earth like a storm. Behind Mu Chun, the nine-nether battle will surged like ocean waves, growing higher and higher, until it resembled a towering tsunami hanging in the sky. As the nine-nether battle will boiled, everyone felt a strange fluctuation emanating from it. This fluctuation was subtle but impossible to ignore. Just a brief sensation of it made people's blood boil, and even in their minds, the thunderous sound of battle seemed to echo. Many powerful figures in the world looked on with bewildered expressions, their gazes shifting. After a moment, some warriors who understood the nature of battle will suddenly seem to remember something. Their faces instantly changed, and they stared at the vast waves of nine-nether battle will in shock. This fluctuation, could it be? Lu Kuei's face turned pale as he stared at the dark waves, his voice dry as he spoke, his disbelief apparent. The spirit of battle will. As this exclamation rang out across the land, everyone instinctively sucked in a cold breath, their eyes filled with shock. These 4 words struck them with great force. The spirit of battle will? It was said that only those who reached an almost supreme level of insight into battle will could possibly manifest such a thing. Once the spirit of battle will was formed, the power of the battle will could be fully realized. However, it was incredibly difficult to cultivate the spirit of battle will. It was said that this was one of the key thresholds for becoming a battle formation master. From a certain perspective, only after refining battle will into the spirit of battle will could one qualify to become a battle formation master. But the number of people who could reach this stage of understanding was extremely rare. Even Lu Kuei, who had some talent in battle will, found it impossible to refine the spirit of battle will. So, when they heard that Mu Chun was refining the spirit of battle will, their shock was immense. Impossible. The spirit of battle will isn't something that can be easily refined. Stop trying to bluff me. Lu Kuei shouted angrily, his face twisted in fury. Though the fluctuation did indeed resemble the spirit of battle will, he still couldn't believe it. This was something he couldn't do, and yet this young man, barely stepping onto the stage, could achieve it? Hearing Lu Kuei's shout, others in the crowd couldn't help but nod in agreement. Their expressions became more uncertain. After all, refining the spirit of battle was not something just anyone could do. A general who can command thousands of soldiers is not that remarkable in the grand scheme of things. After all, anyone with some talent in battle will, given proper training, could achieve such a feat, but a general who could refine the spirit of battle was another matter entirely. Such a commander would undoubtedly draw the attention of many top-tier forces. Because an ordinary general could only unleash less than half of a military's potential. Only one who could refine battle will into the spirit of battle could truly make that army explode with its full, even greater, potential. Furthermore, once the spirit of battle will was refined, it meant the person had qualified to become a battle formation master. If Mu Chun truly became one, even the top forces of the northern domain would scramble for him. After all, everyone knew that a powerful army under the control of a true battle formation master would be an incomprehensible force. And now, this young man before them seemed to have revealed such a qualification. How could people remain calm? However, despite the bewildered gazes of the crowd, Mu Chun remained calm. He looked at Lu Kuei, who was clearly rattled, and a mocking smile tugged at the corner of his lips. He didn't bother to argue. Instead, he took a deep breath and changed his hand gestures. Gurgle. The immense nine-nether battle will behind him surged even more violently. At last, a massive nine-nether light pillar shot forward, and within that pillar, everyone saw a pair of black wings, about 100 feet wide, spread open. The nine-nether sparrow, surrounded by black smoke, was no ordinary creature. The smoke wasn't physical, but rather the boiling battle will it exuded. On its massive body, intricate and obscure battle runes faintly appeared. These were strange symbols that only manifested when battle will was condensed to an extraordinary degree. Everyone was stunned, staring at the dark nine-nether sparrow. Eventually, the expressions on their faces shattered, replaced by terror. At this moment, they could no longer deceive themselves. The nine-nether sparrow, infused with battle runes from head to tail, was undeniably the true embodiment of battle spirit. It was the battle spirit of the 9 Nether Guards. No one had anticipated that Chen would actually manage to condense the 9 Nether Guards' battle spirit. Below, all the 9 Nether Guards warriors had fiery, eager eyes. They gazed up at the tall figure in the sky, where the 9 Nether Sparrow-like battle spirit hovered. This spirit, formed from their collective will, was brought to life by Chen's unique ability. He had the power to materialize their will, elevating these once ordinary soldiers to a position where they could now look down on all others with pride. Victory for the 9 Nether Guards. A synchronized roar, thunderous as the sky itself, shook the heavens and earth. Even the ground trembled under the force. It's actually the battle spirit. In the high skies, both 9 Nether and Lu Wu watched in shock. 9 Nether knew Chen had the talent of a battle formation master, but she hadn't expected that he could condense the 9 Nether battle spirit at this moment. However, compared to 9 Nether's astonishment, Lu Wu was in utter turmoil. His eyes locked on Chen with disbelief. As the leader of the Dragon Snake Sect, he knew exactly what kind of power a commander capable of condensing a battle spirit wielded. In the context of war, the implications were immense. How is this possible? Lu Kuei's face turned pale, and he stared blankly at the scene. The moment the battle spirit took form, he knew he had lost, completely. A force that possessed a battle spirit, under Chen's command, was something he couldn't stop. The battle spirit would elevate the 9 Nether Guards to an astonishing level of power. Chen's eyes were cold as he watched Lu Kuei's stunned expression. His figure moved, appearing above the battle spirit. With a slender finger, he pointed toward Lu Kuei. The 9 Nether Sparrow immediately let out a long cry, its mighty battle will soaring into the sky. Even 1,000 miles away, it could be clearly sensed. The 9 Nether Sparrow, its wings burning with battle will, suddenly swept them out. In an instant, it was like a streak of light tearing through the heavens, descending and piercing through space. It appeared above the Serpent Guards, then, like a divine blade, slashed down. The ground was torn apart. Lu Kuei's face changed drastically. His hair stood on end as he sensed the deadly danger approaching. He roared in fury, and the Serpent Guard's battle will surged violently, forming countless pillars of light that shot toward the black beam, attempting to block it. Boom, boom, boom. But the attempt to block was futile. As the light passed, the battle will was shattered with ease, and in the stunned gazes of all, the beam struck Lu Kuei's body with devastating force. Puffed. A spray of blood shot from Lu Kuei's mouth, and his chest collapsed inward. His body rocketed downward, crashing into the swamp below, leaving a crater nearly 100 yards wide. The flowing swamp could not even begin to cover his impact. Puffed. Below, the Serpent Guards were similarly struck hard. Countless warriors spat blood and fainted, their battle will vanishing entirely. At the sight of this, even though they might recover, the Serpent Guard's strength would be drastically reduced. Across the land, everyone watching the Serpent Guards, who had crumbled in a single move, was left dumbfounded. After a long pause, they regained their senses, exchanging glances filled with shock and fear. The Serpent Guards' battle will had never been weaker than the 9 Nether Guards. Yet, once the battle spirit took form, the 9 Nether Guards had achieved an overwhelming victory. In the sky above, Lu Wu gazed down at the instantly defeated Serpent Guards and Lu Kuei, his body involuntarily trembling. Immediately after, his eyes locked onto Chen, and an overwhelming murderous intent surged within him. This Chen was simply too terrifying. At such a young age, he had already mastered battle will to this extent. If he were to truly become a battle formation master in the future, how terrifying a threat would he pose? At that time, the entire Dragon Snake Sect might be wiped out in an instant by him. Such a potential disaster must not be left unchecked. This person must die. With murder radiating from his every movement, Lu Wu didn't hesitate for a second. His body shot forward like a lightning bolt, heading straight for Chen. You dare? 9 Nether immediately shouted coldly. With a swift motion of her jade hand, a black feather sword appeared and transformed into a wisp of shadowy light, shooting straight toward Lu Wu's back. However, facing 9 Nether's deadly strike, Lu Wu gritted his teeth and, without a care for the possible injury he might sustain, instantly flashed above Chen. His terrifying spiritual energy surged, and he unleashed a lethal palm strike. The vast spiritual energy rushed toward Mu Chen. Nine Nether's beautiful face twisted in shock as she never expected that Lu Wu, even risking serious injury from her, would go as far as to deliver a killing blow to Mu Chen. Clearly, he had realized the terrifying threat Mu Chen would pose if allowed to grow further. Mu Chen, be careful. As Nine Nether's warning reached Mu Chen's ears, he looked up just in time to see the terrifying gust of wind from Lu Wu's crushing palm strike coming straight at him. His body tensed up, prepared for action. In that moment, he was like a leopard about to pounce on its prey. A fierce glint flashed in his eyes. If you want to kill me, then be prepared to pay a bloody price. Boom. The colossal, mountain-like palm strike, carrying immense spiritual energy, descended from the sky. It was a thunderous assault that could easily terrify any five supreme powerhouse into submission. Lu Wu's killing intent had clearly reached its peak at this moment. The spiritual energy palm print appeared in Mu Chen's eyes, but it reflected a fierce and savage aura. Despite the shock of facing Lu Wu's deadly attack, Mu Chen's face showed no fear. At this moment, empowered by Nine Nether's battle will, his strength had reached an extraordinary level. With this power, the Sixth Supreme, who would normally be difficult for him to face, now didn't seem as insurmountable. Roar! Mu Chen formed a hand seal, and instantly, the Nine Nether battle spirit beneath him let out a deafening roar. The intricate battle runes wrapped around his body began to twist and writhe, spreading across his skin at an astonishing pace. In the blink of an eye, his skin was covered in those battle runes. Boom! A dazzling light shot out from Mu Chen's eyes. He let out a long, thunderous roar, filled with boundless battle will. The battle will surged, creating visible shock waves in the air, sweeping across the surroundings. Mu Chen's eyes burned with intensity as if countless fierce beasts were roaring and charging inside him, bringing forth a destructive power. This strength far exceeded his own. It was the battle will of the Nine Nether Guards. Normally, a commander would only be able to control the battle will like a divine artifact, never daring to absorb it into their body. This is because battle will is incredibly violent and merges with the will of countless soldiers. Absorbing it carelessly could lead to an uncontrollable explosion, instantly destroying the body. Only when the battle will crystallizes into a battle spirit can one gain precise control over it, and temporarily transform it into their own power. Of course, Mu Chen was not yet capable of perfect control over it. As the battle will flooded into his body, his internal organs trembled violently. Were it not for the dragon phoenix body he cultivated, his physical strength would not have been able to handle the overwhelming force of the battle will, and he might have been torn apart from the inside. You think you can kill me that easily? Mu Chen roared fiercely. With no trickery, he struck out with a palm, channeling all his strength and the surging battle will into it. When Lu Wu saw the overwhelming momentum of Mu Chen, his expression changed instantly. But then, his face stiffened because he realized that Mu Chen's palm wind showed no sign of defending against his attack. Instead, it was charging straight toward his chest. This sudden shift shocked Lu Wu, making his eyelids twitch uncontrollably. He never expected that, facing his lethal strike, Mu Chen would completely disregard defense, opting instead for a head-on, life-or-death gamble. You're courting death. Lu Wu snarled. But Lu Wu was no ordinary figure either. Faced with Mu Chen's relentless onslaught and the combined attack from the Nine Nethers, he knew there was no way he could escape unscathed. His eyes flickered with a ruthless light, and without hesitation, a mighty palm wind shattered the space, crashing toward Mu Chen's chest like a bolt of lightning. Just as the palm wind was about to strike Mu Chen, golden light erupted from his body. A golden dragon phoenix armor, as if forged from pure gold, appeared. At the same time, the true dragon spirit within his chest stirred, letting out a deep, rumbling roar. The golden light transformed into layers of dragon scales, covering Mu Chen's body. In that single moment, all his defenses surged to their peak. Simultaneously, Mu Chen, filled with ferocious battle will, swung his palm backward and slammed it into Lu Wu's chest. Boom! The violent spiritual energy rippled like crashing waves, and cracks in space spread from the impact point. Mu Chen's body shook violently, and he was sent flying backward, crashing into the ground with a deafening sound. A massive area, spanning nearly 1,000 feet, collapsed as a huge fissure spread out in all directions. While Mu Chen was sent crashing into the earth, Lu Wu was far from unharmed. The blow from Mu Chen was just as vicious as his own. His chest caved in, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood mixed with shattered internal organs. His body was blasted backward like a cannonball. Sizzle! Just as Lu Wu was being thrown back, a black feather sword suddenly pierced through his chest from behind. Violet flames blazed fiercely on the sword. "Ea!" A shrill scream erupted from Lu Wu's mouth as he twisted his head in agony. Behind him, the cold-faced Nine Nether stood, continuously fueling the undying fire, burning his flesh. "If you want to trade lives, then leave yours behind." Nine Nether's beautiful eyes flickered with fury as she coldly spoke. Lu Wu trembled, terror filling his eyes. He knew that if he allowed Nine Nether to continue burning him with the undying fire, he would surely perish here today. "I'll fight you to the death." Lu Wu roared, his hands quickly forming seals. His body began to swell rapidly, and a terrifying surge of spiritual energy radiated outward. Seeing this, Nine Nether's expression shifted. Without hesitation, she withdrew her sword and retreated. Boom! In the next instant, Lu Wu's body exploded with a mighty blast. Gray-black spiritual energy surged into the sky, blooming like a magnificent, yet chilling, firework of destruction. Nine Nether retreated quickly, but she was still caught in the blast, a trace of blood appearing on her lips. The other forces witnessing this scene were horrified, their faces drained of color. No one had expected that Lu Wu, a genuine 6th grade supreme, would be forced to self-destruct. Just minutes ago, he had been in a commanding position, and now he was gone, leaving everyone stunned by the swift turn of events. Suspended in the sky, Nine Nether looked coldly at the violent spiritual energy storm. Her gaze suddenly sharpened as a gray light streaked through the space, diving into the swampy pit where Lu Wu had been struck down. A lifeless and battered figure was swiftly pulled up, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the horizon. That gray light was, of course, the soul of Lu Wu. Taking advantage of the residual energy from his self-detonation, he managed to save Lu Kuei, but he had no power left to assist the remaining serpent guards, forced to flee with Lu Kuei in tow. These warriors, if they were to form a proper army, could certainly unleash tremendous power. However, once they lose their battle will, they would instantly revert to their original state. On this perilous fallen battlefield, their fate would already be sealed. Thus, when they attempted to flee, Nine Nether merely glanced at them, and then turned away, not bothering to stop them. She moved swiftly, descending to the spot where Mu Chen had been struck down. A trace of concern flashed across her beautiful eyes. After all, that fatal blow from Lu Wu earlier had been powerful enough to instantly kill any 5th grade supreme expert. Whoosh! Just as Nine Nether prepared to check on Mu Chen's condition, a streak of light suddenly shot out from the massive pit, finally landing unsteadily in the sky. As soon as that figure appeared, all eyes turned towards the sky. There stood Mu Chen, his upper clothing completely torn, his mouth stained with blood. Even his body was soaked in blood, with gruesome wounds spreading from his chest, a sight that was truly horrifying. Hiss! Seeing Mu Chen's terrifying injuries, everyone couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. However, what shocked them even more was that Mu Chen himself seemed unperturbed by his severe wounds. "Are you alright?" Nine Nether appeared beside Mu Chen in a flash. She looked at the horrific wounds all over his body, her brows twitching slightly. "He's still too green to try to take me down." Mu Chen wiped the blood from his mouth and grinned. He tore off the tattered remnants of his clothes, revealing the wounds beneath. Amidst the horrific gashes, a faint golden light could be seen flickering through his flesh. To everyone's amazement, those deadly wounds were visibly healing before their eyes. Seeing this, Nine Nether finally breathed a sigh of relief. She had almost forgotten how abnormal Mu Chen was, a humanoid divine beast. No wonder he dared to exchange blows with Lu Wu earlier. It was because of his body's terrifying self-healing ability. Lu Wu probably never imagined that the injuries he thought would severely harm Mu Chen were not as frightening as he had expected. Chen lowered his head and noticed that the true dragon spirit within his chest had dimmed slightly. Clearly, taking that blow from Lu Wu had not been a simple feat if not for relying on the Dragon Phoenix golden armor, the true dragon spirit, and the overwhelming battle while protecting him. That strike from Lu Wu might have been enough to kill him. A 6th grade supreme is not easy to deal with. If it weren't for the 9 Nether Guards' battle will, Chen would have had no choice but to avoid confrontation with such a powerful opponent. As Chen's wounds healed rapidly, he and 9 Nether exchanged a look, and their gazes locked onto the many groups still remaining in the area. When those groups met their gaze, they couldn't help but shudder. They had originally hoped to watch from the sidelines, but seeing the current situation, it seemed that both Chen and 9 Nether still had formidable combat power, especially with the 9 Nether Guards eyeing them fiercely from below. At this point, the situation was completely under 9 Nether Palace's control. The various groups exchanged glances and sighed in unison before ceasing to hesitate. They all began to retreat. Chen and 9 Nether let out a sigh of relief upon seeing the groups leave. Although these groups were not as strong as the Dragon Snake Sect, they would still have been troublesome in a fight. Now that they were leaving, it was for the best. Once the area was cleared of all other forces, Chen and 9 Nether shifted their focus to the ruins hall that was faintly visible in the depths of the swamp. This relic, from this moment on, would be theirs to claim. As the last batch of forces withdrew from the area, Chen and 9 Nether descended from the sky, hovering over the black swamp's outskirts. The swamp was shrouded in a dark mist, with a faint foul stench in the air, clearly laced with deadly poison. In the depths of the swamp, shadows flitted through the muck, giving off an ominous sense of danger. Chen and 9 Nether exchanged another glance, and with a wave of his hand, the 9 Nether Guards swiftly arrived, landing neatly at the swamp's edge. "You all stay here and make sure no one disturbs us," Chen ordered. Clearly, in a place like this, having too many people around wouldn't be ideal, so it was best to leave the 9 Nether Guards to secure the perimeter. "Yes." The thousands of 9 Nether Guards responded in unison, their voices thunderous enough to shake the earth. Chen and 9 Nether exchanged a nod before their figures transformed into streaks of light, shooting forward at breakneck speed, tearing through the black poison mist. Like a thunderbolt, they rushed toward the ruins deep within the swamp. The overwhelming spiritual energy rippled around them, with violet flames rising and burning away the approaching poison mist. Though the poison mist inside the swamp was dangerous, it posed little threat to the two, especially since they were protected by the undying fire. Whoosh! Both of them pushed their speed to the limit. While they had already startled the other factions, they couldn't rule out the possibility of another force discovering the ruins. If that happened, they might face unforeseen complications. They needed to act quickly and extract the fallen source pills from this 3rd-grade ruins. Boom! Just as they delved deeper into the swamp, a dark light suddenly shot out from the murky swamp, accompanied by a foul stench that surged toward them. 9 Nether's face remained unchanged as she flicked her finger, sending a spiritual energy black feather burning with violet flames toward the dark light. In an instant, the flames engulfed the light, turning it into ashes. As the dark light disintegrated, Chen could clearly see a black poison crocodile, about 10 feet in length, emerging. Its grotesque form exuded a foul stench, and its massive jaws drooled with vile, putrid saliva. The air around it crackled with wild spiritual energy, signaling that it was a fierce beast. 9 Nether casually disposed of the black poison crocodile, but her face showed no sign of satisfaction. Instead, her willow brows furrowed, and Chen, standing beside her, frowned as well. At that moment, the swamp suddenly trembled. Numerous dark lights flickered from the sludge, and as they looked around, countless black poison crocodiles raised their heads. Their crimson eyes locked onto Chen and 9 Nether. The number of poison crocodiles was incalculable. While Chen and 9 Nether weren't afraid, if they were delayed, it would significantly slow down their progress in extracting the fallen source pills. "What should we do?" Chen asked 9 Nether. At this point, it seemed the only option was to force their way through. 9 Nether pondered for a moment, then suddenly stomped her foot. At once, an enormous 9 Nether soul sparrow formed behind her, radiating a powerful divine beast pressure. Hiss! The poison crocodiles, sensing the divine beast's pressure, immediately started to panic. Some were so frightened that they backed away. Though their intelligence was low, they could instinctively sense that the pressure was far beyond their reach. Seeing this, Mu Chen's eyes brightened. He stepped forward, and the true dragon and phoenix spirits on his chest and back flared with golden light, releasing an overwhelming aura. As soon as his aura spread, the already panicked poison crocodiles became terrified and began to retreat frantically. The pressure carried by the true dragon and phoenix spirits was, in a way, even stronger than the 9 Nether Soul Sparrows, because on the divine beast rankings, the 9 Nether Soul Sparrow ranked slightly lower than the true dragon and phoenix. Unless the 9 Nether Soul Sparrow could evolve into the legendary undying bird, it wouldn't surpass the true phoenix and true dragon. In just a few breaths, the seemingly endless tide of poison crocodiles had completely retreated before their overwhelming pressure. Mu Chen turned with a smile, glancing at 9 Nether and saying, "Well, what do you think?" 9 Nether shot him a glare, though there was a slight acknowledgement in her eyes. She couldn't deny that Mu Chen, with the true dragon and phoenix spirits, was subtly surpassing her in terms of divine beast pressure. This made 9 Nether feel somewhat complex. She didn't know when it had started, but the young man who once seemed so weak in her eyes was now beginning to catch up with her, slowly shining in his own way. While this gave her a sense of pride, it also made her feel an unexpected twinge of melancholy. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before she couldn't teach him lessons like she had in the past. It seemed that she would need to speed up her own cultivation as well. Once I activate the undying bird's bloodline fully, your true dragon and phoenix spirits won't be so impressive, 9 Nether thought to herself, her lips curling in a dismissive smirk. Mu Chen smiled. He knew how proud 9 Nether was, and that she would never admit defeat out loud. As they delved deeper, Mu Chen and his companions finally realized how many fierce beasts were hiding within the swamp. Fortunately, both of them possessed the pressure of divine beasts, allowing them to pass through the obstacles posed by these creatures in the shortest time and with minimal cost. About 10 minutes later, their speed began to slow down. In the deepest part, shrouded in toxic mist, the outlines of ancient grand halls started to appear. Whoosh! 2 streaks of light shot out, and the toxic mist suddenly vanished as if it had been blocked. Their vision immediately cleared, and before them lay a vast ruin. Amid the ruins, they could see towering remnants of broken palaces, exuding an ancient and weathered aura that seemed to pierce through time and space, echoing from the distant past. Mu Chen and his companion's breath caught in awe. "Prepare to move." 9 Nether quickly snapped back to her senses and looked at Mu Chen. "Split up and act fast." "Any objections?" Mu Chen smiled and gave a gesture. Refining fallen source pills was not particularly complicated. As long as one's strength was above the 3rd grade supreme, it was doable, though the efficiency varied. Seeing this, 9 Nether didn't hesitate. Her figure flickered and she charged into a ruined hall. Mu Chen also wasted no time. He turned and flew into another collapsed hall. Inside, he saw scattered bones on the floor, in various postures, clearly from those who had fought fiercely before their deaths. Even after thousands of years, the hall still carried a faint aura of brutal battle. Mu Chen solemnly gazed at the scene. He bowed towards the bones. No matter what, these warriors had fought for the entire great 1,000 worlds in the ancient battles. "Forgive me," Mu Chen murmured, then appeared atop a stone pillar within the hall. He formed a hand seal. An immense spiritual energy seemed to form a swirling vortex in his palms, the power pulling and spreading out. The stones in the hall began to stir as a dark, sinister aura seeped out from the bones, transforming into black light that was drawn into Mu Chen's powerful spiritual vortex. This sinister aura was fallen origin energy, a unique power formed when these strong beings perished, merging the supreme sea within their bodies with the distinctive energy of the fallen battlefield. The dark aura rapidly condensed within the spiritual vortex. When it reached its peak, a wisp of eerie light shot upward from the vortex. Mu Chen sucked in his palm, and the eerie light fell, hovering before him. His gaze focused, and he saw a spirit pill about the size of a longan, perfectly round and jet black, like a black hole. It spun in front of him, radiating the same energy fluctuation as the fallen origin energy. This was clearly a fallen source pill, the most crucial resource in the fallen battlefield. Mu Chen waved his sleeve, collecting the pill, and then resumed refining the remaining fallen origin energy in the hall. As he absorbed the remaining energy, 5 more fallen source pills were refined. When the 5th one was produced, the skeletons around him turned to bone powder and scattered to the ground, their spiritual energy having been entirely absorbed. Mu Chen sighed softly at the sight. He waved his robe, and the bone powder rose, eventually being condensed into a set of nameless bone plaques, neatly stacked on the floor. After completing this task, Mu Chen bowed once more and left the hall, quickly moving toward the next area. In the following half hour, Mu Chen visited about 18 more halls, gathering a total of 53 fallen origin pills, a rather impressive haul. Finally, in the deepest part of the ruins, Mu Chen entered the last broken hall. As usual, he performed a bow, ready to begin refining the fallen source pills once again. But his expression suddenly changed, and his spiritual energy surged wildly. His gaze fixed on the far end of the hall. Mu Chen gazed at the figure in the gray robe, his pupils shrinking sharply. Was there still a living person here? As Xiao Qingyun's voice echoed in the silent ruins, his figure had completely vanished. The only proof of his presence were the fallen source pills that floated around Mu Chen and the others. This disciple under the 4th hall master of the ancient heavenly palace had completely disappeared from this world, leaving no trace behind. Mu Chen looked at the spot where Xiao Qingyun had disappeared, a hint of sorrow in his eyes. From the information revealed in his words, he could vaguely discern just how massive the ancient heavenly palace had been in the distant past. With 7 hall masters, they were all likely at the Earth Supreme level, and the palace lord must have been a true heavenly supreme. However, even this terrifying powerhouse eventually fell into decline. This only showed just how horrific the invasion from the extraterritorial clan had been. The kind of war that affected an entire plane, Mu Chen could hardly imagine it now. Seeing the mood turn heavy, the 9 Nether, with a faint smile, spoke up. No need to think too much. Though the extraterritorial clan is powerful, our great 1,000 worlds are not weak either. Many peak experts are always vigilant against them. Mu Chen nodded. Given his current strength, worrying over these things seemed a bit unnecessary. Let's go. This 3 extremes ruins no longer has any fallen origin energy. With a wave of her jade hand, the 9 Nether gathered all the fallen source pills floating around her. A joyful smile appeared on her cold, beautiful face. Altogether, we've gathered over 300 fallen source pills. This far exceeds what we'd find in an ordinary 3 extremes ruins. Mu Chen nodded. Typically, a 3 extremes ruins would yield only about 100 fallen source pills. However, their luck had been exceptional. They had encountered Xiao Qingyun, whose body had been preserved by evil energy, leaving him intact despite his death. He had once been a 9th grade supreme, and although time had diminished his strength, the fallen origin energy in his body was clearly much better preserved than that of other fallen powerhouses in this ruin. Of course, compared to the spirit-seeking compass they had acquired, these hundreds of fallen source pills were no longer much of a surprise. Mu Chen grinned, tossing the dark compass in his hand. With the spirit-seeking compass, they would gain the upper hand in their search for more ruins. For obtaining fallen source pills, this was practically a divine artifact. Let's go. The 2 of them glanced around the completely obliterated ruins before swiftly taking off, transforming into 2 streaks of light and darting out of the marsh at lightning speed. Outside the marsh, the 9 Nether guards spread out like a tide of darkness. Their vigilant eyes scanned the surroundings as their hands gripped their spears tightly, their bodies as taut as a leopard's. On the distant mountains, more 9 Nether guards stood watch, clearly keeping an eye on the area to prevent anyone from disturbing Mu Chen and the 9 Nether as they refined the fallen source pills. Whoosh! 2 streaks of light suddenly shot out from the depths of the marsh, appearing midair in front of the 9 Nether guards. The battle-ready 9 Nether warriors immediately showed joy on their faces, quickly bowing in respect. Have any other forces approached? Mu Chen asked, turning to Qiu Shan. He had once been one of the top experts among the 9 Nether guards. With the ample resources provided by the 9 Nether Palace, His strength had increased rapidly, and he had already reached the second-grade supreme level. Now he, along with 3 other top experts, had been promoted to the 4 captains of the 9 Nether Guards, tasked with training the others. The towering Qiu Shan quickly cupped his fists and replied, "Report, Commander, there were some forces that approached, but we have blocked them all." Mu Chen nodded with satisfaction. Though he and the 9 Nether had not been stationed here, the 9 Nether Guards were far stronger now than when he first arrived at the 9 Nether Palace. Ordinary forces, seeing their formation, would generally avoid provoking them. "Palace Master, Commander, where should we head next?" Qiu Shan and the others looked at Mu Chen with battle intent in their eyes. Over the past year, they had received abundant cultivation resources from the 9 Nether Palace, rapidly improving their strength. They also needed to let Mu Chen and the 9 Nethers know that the vast cultivation resources hadn't been wasted in vain. Mu Chen smiled. The map given to them by Mandala should have led them to their limit. If they followed the original plan, they would now be wandering aimlessly like headless flies, hoping to stumble upon another ruin by luck. But fortunately, they were now in a position to change that. "It's time to try this thing out." Mu Chen grinned and took out the dark compass, channeling spiritual energy into it. Immediately, complex spiritual patterns appeared on its surface, followed by a burst of light. On the compass, a delicate spiritual energy screen emerged, and spiritual energy beams began to spread outward in concentric rings. Mu Chen and the 9 Nethers both stared intently at the compass. This thing had been hidden by Shao Qingyun for thousands of years, and no one knew if it still worked. If it was damaged, their hopes would be in vain. Qiu Shan and the others, standing nearby, were completely baffled, exchanging confused glances. Time passed slowly, but the aura on the compass continued to expand, with no signs of any anomalies. Mu Chen and the 9 Nethers began to look concerned. However, just as they were about to give up, the dark compass suddenly shook. A red dot appeared on the light screen, flickering rapidly. "There's movement." Mu Chen's eyes lit up. As soon as his words were spoken, another light appeared farther away, more intense than the first. In just a few seconds, the compass had located 2 ruins containing fallen origin energy. If other factions knew how quickly it was able to search, they would be green with envy. With such a tool, finding fallen source pills would be a breeze. "Let's go." Mu Chen and the 9 Nethers were ecstatic. Without hesitation, they immediately organized the 9 Nethers Guard. A large number of soldiers surged forward like a vast wave of light, leaving the swamp behind and heading straight for the direction indicated by the compass. The appearance of the 9 Nethers Guard caused other factions they passed to retreat in alarm, clearly intimidated by the overwhelming battle intent emanating from the 9 Nethers. Some other powerful factions, not wanting to clash with the 9 Nethers Palace at this time, also chose to withdraw. After all, while the 9 Nethers Palace might not be terrifying on its own, the Great Luo Heaven Domain behind it was a top-tier force that commanded respect from many factions. For all these reasons, their mission was surprisingly smooth. Though there were occasional obstacles, they didn't slow them down much. So, just 2 hours later, they arrived at the first ruin marked by the compass. However, they were a little disappointed to find that this ruin wasn't as strong as the one they had found before. It wasn't even on the level of a 3 Extremes ruins. Still, even though it was a bit of a letdown, any gain was better than nothing. It was certainly better than those other factions, who were still wandering around desperately searching for ruins with no luck. With that in mind, Mu Chen and the others quickly refined the fallen origin energy inside the ruin, collecting over 50 fallen origin pills. After clearing the ruin, they immediately set off for the second red dot. This ruin did not disappoint them. The fallen origin energy inside was on the level of a 3 Extremes ruins. But when they tried to claim this ruin, they finally encountered resistance. The force opposing them was the Iron Blood War Sect, one of the most famous top-tier factions in the Northern Domain. This sect was known for its love of battle, and many factions in the Northern Domain feared them. So, when Mu Chen and the others saw the Iron Blood Army, they knew a big fight was unavoidable. Just as Mu Chen was about to summon the battle spirit of the 9 Nethers Guard to prepare for battle, the leader of the Iron Blood Army suddenly ordered a retreat, cursing loudly as they pulled back. At that moment, When Mu Chen heard the distant curses and saw the orderly retreat of the Iron Blood army, he couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and helplessness. However, he was also glad to avoid a direct confrontation with the Iron Blood War sect. From the way the Iron Blood War sect was acting, it seemed they were not as bloodthirsty and crazed as the rumors suggested. Despite knowing the heavy price they would have to pay, they wisely chose to retreat. With the Iron Blood War sect's retreat, the ruins once again fell into Mu Chen and his team's hands. This Three Extremes ruins added another 200 Fallen Source pills to their collection, bringing their total to around 600 Fallen Source pills. According to Nine Nether, this was an outstanding achievement. After all, finding 3 ruins in such a short period of time was rare. Unless other forces had similar means as them, capable of detecting fallen origin energy, it was highly unusual. Whoosh! After thoroughly looting the ruins, Mu Chen and Nine Nether instructed the 9 Nether guards to take a brief rest. Meanwhile, they once again took out the spirit-seeking compass, preparing to continue their search. However, just as they were about to explore other ruins, the expressions of Nine Nether and Mu Chen suddenly changed. They clenched their palms, and a greenish bronze mirror appeared in their hands. This was the token given by Mandala to the 9 kings before the Grand Hunting War began. At this moment, a blood-red light spot was flashing rapidly on the bronze mirror. It was a desperate distress signal. Mu Chen and Nine Nether stared at the blood-red light spot on the mirror, their expressions turning grave. A king-level team from their great Luo Heaven domain had been forced into a dire situation and was now using the mirror to call for help.